On this episode of Long Riders Radio, we're going to be talking with Gary Huff, the rally master for the first ever North by Northwest rally. Coming up! Support for Long Riders Radio comes from DiscountRamps.com. DiscountRamps.com offers a huge selection of power sports products for your ATV, UTV, motorcycle, and more. Everything you need to load, haul, or transport your power sports toys. Long Riders Radio listeners can save 15% off their order by using coupon code LONG. That's LONG at DiscountRamps.com. Well, hey there everyone, Justin here. Hope you're doing well. It is the end of September, so apologies for not having a end of August podcast. I didn't really have a great idea for what to do for a show, and there was nice weather, and I wanted to go riding, so I went riding instead rather than sitting in front of my computer for a good chunk of a weekend. So anyway, hope you're not too bent out of shape about that, but if you are, sorry. This month's episode, we're going to talk with Gary Huff, who was the rally master for the North by Northwest rally. And first time this rally has been run. It's kind of loosely affiliated with the Nitwit group, and I ended up actually doing this rally. I was planning on doing it, and it did not get canceled. It ended up going off without a hitch, in my opinion, and so that was kind of cool. And really appreciate Gary for putting on this event, because I know it was not easy, and he had a lot of challenges to overcome, which we'll get into in the episode here. One of the things that I did right before that rally was I ended up doing an in-state saddle sore. Technically, I guess it's not a saddle sore because I haven't gotten it approved yet, but that'll be forthcoming shortly, hopefully. But wanted to do another certified ride, because I haven't done one in a long time. I haven't done one probably since 2000. I think it was 15 I did one. And so I wanted to do another ride like that, and wanted to do one especially on the new bike, because I hadn't really done a really long kind of endurance ride on it yet. So did that, and the other cool thing, I think at least, well, we'll find out, is I recorded the whole thing on my cameras. So hopefully we've got a start to finish look at what a saddle sore is. Now, granted, it's not the most difficult saddle sore in the world because it was all on freeway. I think my average speed was about 70, so I was pretty much doing it on Bun Burner Gold paste. But I wanted to do something special, and so I did it in state. So it's all in the state of Washington. So you can be looking forward to that after a couple weeks here when I have a chance to edit it all together. So with that, let's talk with Gary, and hope you enjoyed the episode. Well, on the line today, we have the rally master of the first inaugural North by Northwest rally that I attended 2 weeks ago. And the reason why my garage smells like a campfire right now, let me introduce to you Mr. Gary Huff. Gary, welcome to Long Riders Radio.
Thank you, Justin. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. You want to start out by telling the folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. From a long rider's perspective, I'm kind of a newbie to the sport. I actually completed my first saddle sore on September 11th, 2016. Thought it was kind of crazy, and it wasn't until 2017 that myself and my wife did a 2-up saddle sore about 11 months later. But during 2017, somewhere in there, I became a premier member of the IBA, and I was getting the updates from the IBR, and I was just fascinated by it because myself and my wife had done long rides outside the LD community, 600-700 miles a day. That was kind of our norm, and we'd talk to riders that ride 100-200 miles and kind of snickered at them. But I'm looking at this IBR thing, and I'm like, wow, there's actually guys and gals that go out and do this kind of thing. I could do that, and of course, being new to the whole thing, I thought you could just sign up. I could do that. I could do 850, 900,000 miles a day, whatever. And anyway, so the journey started, and wasn't sure what I was getting into, and it's like, oh, you can't just go sign up for the IBR. You actually have to have a resume with some, you know, with some rallies on it and some certified rides and that kind of thing. So I thought I learned, you know, the 3-digit number. I really kind of want a number. So the last couple of years, I worked very hard on my resume. And again, to the vets out there that have been doing this for years, and the big dogs, you know, my resume is not that big, but you know, I've ridden in approximately 10 rallies under 7 different rally masters. I rode in Butt Light 9. I've ridden in a couple of Heart of Texas, the Mira Unfinished Business Rally, several Nitwits. Rode out to the East Coast to get the Mason Dixon. That was interesting. The Rock and Ride, and then of course How the West was won. And for certified rides, again, compared to the big dogs, and not that much, but I do have in just a couple of years over 40,000 miles of IBA certified rides.
Oh, wow.
You know, Mile Leader Gold. Finished the 48 States Challenge. Kind of a long story behind that. It was supposed to be a 49 state challenge. I was going to add Alaska, and I ran into some pretty big difficulty that I salvaged the 48 state. And anyway, that was the last IBR actually showed up at the start and everything. I've also completed the George Wyman Memorial Challenge.
Oh, cool.
And that was a lot of fun. Tim does a great job with that. That was a heck of a lot of fun. So that's a little bit about my writing.
Well, so what
career.
The heck made you want to be
Yeah,
a rally master?
So the How the West was won. It got it got postponed a year. I didn't realize it was just postponed. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I thought, you know, hey, I really want to rally here. And so my wife and myself went out scouting a bunch of locations. I was going to do it a little bit different than Justin does his rally. And lo and behold, it's like, okay, his rally's next year. It's kind of funny. Wasn't familiar with his rally. Turns out 2 of the locations we scouted were actually the 2 of his. And certainly, I don't want to step on any other rally master's toes. I knew there wasn't anything at the time in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, truly heart of the Pacific Northwest. I know there's a lot of overlap, and certainly rally masters have locations up there. I'm actually from there. I grew up most of my life in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And I've ridden a lot of the roads out there. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to pick mine up and move it. And it still at the time was just kind of a thought. You know, I had thrown it out there to several riders. Honestly, didn't think I'd get more than a dozen. And it was one of the ride-to-eats in Texas that I didn't attend. I think it was Paul Tong might have announced, hey, Gary's running a rally next year in the Pacific Northwest. And I thought, okay, I guess Gary's running a rally next year in the Pacific Northwest. So, yeah, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy to run. You know, the good news is, you know, I did have help with some of the best rally masters out there. I certainly learned a lot, and anyway, I guess that's me.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how the North by Northwest Rally came about.
Is the name North by Northwest just strictly? Does it have any other significance other than
No,
Northwest?
not at all. And you know, I was talking to another rally master, and I was like, hey, you know, there's the East Coast and the Best Coast, and I started thinking, should I call it something clever like North by North Best, or it's just going to confuse everybody. So really, just, you know, a lot of people see the event for the first time on Ridemaster because they aren't on social media, and I thought, hey, if I go North by Northwest, hopefully that'll give a clue that it's, you know, not in the Southeast.
Yeah.
So it was really, there is no significance to the movie. In fact, it's one of the few Hitchcock movies I've never seen. I said I was going to watch it before I went there, just in case something come up and some writer pulled something on me. I still haven't seen that movie to this day. So yeah, no connections there. It's just what I came up with, since it's in the Northwest,
So after you were volunteered to be a rally master, this rally started out as a 36-hour rally, and
33, yeah,
33, and
basically like a two day.
And then you expanded it.
Yeah, so obviously with the situations of 2020, a lot of rallies are getting canceled. And this was really just going to be a 2-day rally with the rally pack coming out a full 2 weeks in advance. When I kind of had the plan, the reason the full 2 weeks is because you had a holiday weekend in there, and I thought people are out with their kids and stuff, and 2 weeks might be a little bit long, but it was like, hey, I can still go out and do this thing. And then of course COVID-19 hits, and I was signed up for Butt Light. I was drawn for and signed up for the last ever Butt Light, and would have loved to ride it.
Yeah.
When it got moved right on top of my rally, and I looked at the of course my rally is very, very small, and I looked at the rider conflicts, and I only had several, and I thought, I'm not gonna ride Butt Light because I've decided, one of the reasons I want to do this is, and I got a bunch of rookies from the Pacific Northwest who wouldn't otherwise ride, and I want to perpetuate this small community. I want to perpetuate the sport, so I'm going to give that up. I'm going to keep it. Well, I actually had a couple of riders that were in both, and one of them in particular said, I'm going to ride yours, and I was really amazed. I said, wow, this is going to be the last ever Butt Light. It's going to be epic. And he said it's going to be the first ever North by Northwest rally. It's going to be epic. And I said, well, okay. And a couple other riders put some feelers, or gave me some advice, and I thought, just kind of to make it a little bit longer, I said, I put out feelers to the riders that are already registered, and I said, hey, for any of those that are interested, I'm going to add a 2-day to the beginning of this rally. But here's the deal: it's going to okay. So there's no change to the 33-hour version that starts and ends in Bend, but the extra 2 days is going to start right here in Colorado Springs. It's the only way I could really make it work. And oh, by the way, to give you a little bit more practice, it's going to be a true planning on the clock. So, you're going to get up in the morning. So think of a leg 2 of Butt Light, or a leg 2 of the IBR. You're going to get up in the morning, and this is obviously the most unorthodox thing, but I did it out of the changing situation. And you're going to get the packets, pretty simple, not any weird combos and stuff. And your job is to get from Colorado Springs to Bend, and then you're going to continue on the next 2 days, just as if you were a 33-hour rider. So that's what I came up with. I was honestly going to do it if I had like at least 4 riders, and I had about 7 or 8 decide, hey, I want to do that right off the bat. But then as we learned more, and Butt Light was unfortunately eventually canceled, all the people that joined after that all joined the 4-day option. So okay,
yeah, and I would have been up for the 4-day, but work got in the way. So
work definitely gets in the way, and even planning next year's rally, this year's rally, work does get in the way of that. Yeah, it certainly does.
Okay, so there was an official theme to at least the 33-hour version that I want to get to in a second, but the unofficial theme that you alluded to of this rally was fire and ice. Can you talk a little bit about why it got that? That was the kind of unofficial theme.
Yeah, fire and ice is probably backwards. Probably should have been ice and fire, but
yeah.
Nobody ever says it that way. So, a full week before leg 1, there was this storm of the decade, forecasted to hit Colorado, and of course, I'm optimistic. I'm not too worried about this September. I've lived here in the Colorado Springs for over 20 years, and really, everybody that's outside of this area is like, man, they get a ton of snow. We really don't, and nothing sticks at all. We really don't get any accumulation until late October. That's when it's so something coming in September is not worrying me. But every day comes and the forecast gets worse and worse and worse, and I'm like, every time I'm looking at the forecast, it's worse. And one of my friends said, well, stop looking at the forecast. The night before the leg one, we'll call it, started, I decided to treat the riders that decided to do the 4-day to a dinner, to a restaurant that was just a few blocks away. But the weather was so bad, I actually shuttled them. And a little side note here, our car, I went to shuttle them in our personal vehicle, several trips. First shuttle trip, the battery dies, and of course my little thing, it was on the thing to do that night. I'm like, and I look over at my wife, and she just goes, "It's 2020, Gary," kind of like the car that gets stuck in the mud and looks over and I guess we're here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm thinking about it all night. I'm looking at traffic cams because obviously we're on the eastern side of the Continental Divide. I need to get the riders on the western side of the Continental Divide. And I'm like, am I going to even be able to salvage a leg one? So we woke up in the morning. Obviously I live here, so I stayed in my own house. Drove back to the host hotel, and my wife Randy and we're both looking at traffic cams on Raton Pass and Monument Hill. You kind of have to get over those. We're also looking at snowfalls. So I basically had kind of a northern route, a southern route, and a straight through route to get to Winnemucca. I'll explain that in a second before you got to Bend. Anyway, we get to the hotel, and there's no ice on the road. The roads are fine. Monument Hill looked great. But Raton Pass looked a little bit dicey. I mean, it wasn't like slippery, slidey, but it was like, I'm not sure. So to try to salvage it, I had a much like the original 33-hour or leg 2 for the 4 days. I had a mandatory rest bonus in there, 4 hours minimum, and I paid to 6 hours. And so that morning I made a judgment call. I thought about it somewhat that night. It's like, look, it's either just going to be a ride to Bend and nothing, or can I salvage some of this? And after looking at the forecast, it was like the straight through route was not optional or not available.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of the bonus locations had a foot of snow, which is just unheard of. And Monarch Pass was closed. So I thought, hey, we're all adults here. So what I did is I allowed the riders to take that 6-hour rest bonus and split it into 2, however they wanted. Mm-hmm. Let them leave late from the hotel, depending on what route they wanted. At the same time, and to me, rider safety is paramount. Certainly wasn't putting them in risk at that point because it was going to take them a couple hours to get to Raton. But at the same time, I basically kind of, the whole idea was just a little bit of experience, no weird combos, no weird puzzles. Let's just a little bit of planning on the clock, get out there and ride and have a good time. So having these kind of 3 routes, and one of them's pretty much just off the table, I thought, well, certainly everybody's going to go the south route, and maybe to not have everybody stacked up, or maybe not stacked up, have everybody a little separation between points.
Yeah.
I added an hour to leg 1, and when I handed out the packs, the thumb drives, explained that to them, said, hey, I'm going to be around for a few minutes, but me and Randy are going to get in the car and go.
Yeah, because you got to get to Bend too.
Yeah, I didn't want to fly with this other option. I didn't want to fly because I wanted to be in as much cell phone coverage as I possibly could. I wanted to be maybe just ahead of the riders a little bit for safety. I'd be somewhere in their vicinity. But yeah, I was a couple of them left right away. Some of them used almost the entire 6 hours and said, I'm just going to, take do what I need to do. I was actually really surprised, though. We had one bike ride the very competitive northern route, and I thought, everybody's going to go south. Everybody's going to go south, and I only had 3 riders go south, and then the rest of them, they did. I thought they were pretty creative. It's something I'm kind of trying to do this as a rally master. I'm not even thinking about routes, and they basically skirted around those first 3 bonus locations that were in the snow, picked up a couple kind of in the center, and then dipped down and got some of the southern ones. So
interesting.
I thought and again a small group, but if you look at the spot wall and stuff, it's like, wow, they actually did all go kind of different ways, and so I was kind of happy about that, and everybody arrived safe and sound. As long as I'm on this, I will mention Winnemucca. If you look at leg 2, which everybody, you included, had the packet a couple weeks earlier, some of these riders are going to go kind of right past. You have to get to Bend, right? And obviously, I have bonus locations between here and Bend, so I funneled everybody through Winnemucca to keep them away from the leg 2 locations. And I actually had 3 that they were going to kind of get close to, and I had special requirements for those 3 locations for the 4-day riders. If anybody got kind of close, they were all good boys and girls and stayed away from them. I mean, they kind of had to. I mean, everybody was just like, let's just, get the cold over with. And so.
So we talked about the unofficial theme. What your official theme, which I thought was pretty clever for the 33-hour rally, was surf and turf. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, surf and turf. When I originally got the concept of this, I thought, I'm going to have surfs entirely on the west side of the Cascades. That'd be a fish. I'm going to have turfs entirely on the east side of the Cascades. And my idea was, hey, you're going to bounce back and forth across the Cascades. And after looking at that for a while, it's like, if I do it this way, you're never even going to get out of Oregon. This is going to be the dumbest rally ever. So, I had a handful of locations picked out. And as I started developing it, I wasn't even sure I was going to stick with that theme, to be honest with you. I wasn't even sure I was going to have a theme. A lot of rallies don't, and they're just fine without a theme. And it just kind of developed, and, not a ton of locations. It was basically, there were some certain roads I wanted you guys to go down, and maybe a little less twisties next year, but there were definitely some twisty roads that I'm very fond of. I wanted you to go down. I was going to pay you very, very high points for that. And it just kind of started developing, and it was like, well, I can still kind of make the surf and turf work, because that's, and for most of the locations, it really was a fish theme or a water theme thing. And now there were a few, the Happy Camp thing, it was a Bigfoot. Well, I needed a beverage there. I mean, you needed a beverage in this to build that meal.
Yeah. So you had surf, turf, beverages, appetizers, and desserts that you could pick.
Yeah, and the desserts were worth the most. The appetizers next most, and then just the surf, turf, and beverage. So weren't worth quite as much. And then I stumbled upon the up in the Panhandle, Lake Pend Oreille, stumbled upon the Lady Liberty statue, the scale statue, and I stumbled upon the Golden Gate Bridge Pond, which had that interesting story about the guy that had his Harley stolen and built that. And one of my colleagues at work said, well, I think there's another one up in Seattle. And I'm like, well, I can do coast to coast or a coast to coast ride, and then the Paul Bunions are obviously misplaced out there in the Northwest, but I thought, hey, I'll just add something, and I really tried to engineer this rally to where the real super competitive big dogs could be competitive, but also pretty minimal finisher requirements so that newbies could go out and just have fun, and I could try to engineer it that way.
So I just realized we only talked about, when we talked about the unofficial theme.
We didn't talk about the
fire. So why don't you talk about the fire? Because that on leg 2, that's when the fire came into.
Yeah. So I used to live out there. I knew the fires could be bad. I guess I really didn't realize how bad they were. To be honest with you, obviously myself and my wife arrived from the east. We got into Bend, it was fine. It was just the day before you guys got there, and the next day it was a little bit worse. And
and the wind was coming from the east, so it was blowing, which is odd in the Pacific Northwest.
Very odd.
So you have this easterly wind blowing all the smoke out to sea, basically, which normally it goes the opposite direction.
Obviously, yeah. And I had a couple people, one rider in particular, said, "Hey, you ought to take a look at this." And I get there. We ended up showing up about 2:00 in the morning Pacific time, and several hours of sleep. I'm like, well, I got to check this out. One rider mentioned Happy Camp, and so I'm not really prepared to kind of like just change the rally midstream, but it's like I got to look at something. So as quick as I could, I got on Washington's the state of Washington's fire road closure, Oregon's and California's, and Idaho and Montana, and Idaho and Montana were fine. And of course, all 3 websites are completely different. Some better than others. I also use Google Maps, and I was really trying to say, hey, which of my locations are affected? There was one in kind of south central Oregon. It was a very small bonus location worth about 56 points, nothing. There was no way to get to it, but it meant nothing. There was one of my buddies I went to college with. He actually, I can't remember what surf it was, but it was west of Eugene. You could only get to that from the west, and I thought, that's not a big. The fish were slightly more plentiful. Beef was terrible, right? There was 5 beefs. There was 6 beverages.
I'm aware.
Fish were a little more plentiful, and I'm like, it was a 177 point fish or something. So I'm like, okay, the turf that was the beef that was up in central Washington, it's actually non-fire accessible from 4 directions. With the fire, it wasn't accessible from the direct east, which is actually where I wanted you to ride, but Google Maps, any other routing thing, wanted you to actually approach it from the south because the road was faster. So the only part of that that was closed was from the east. So put that out. But what it did do, I was really, I knew the south route might be kind of popular. Happy Camp, you couldn't get to that beverage. The Happy Camp has 3 ways in. All the roads were closed. And I'm like, man, if riders planned the southern route there and, spent days, whatever, planning it, they're going to have to replan everything because they're not going to get that necessary beverage to complete the meal. So I was like, okay, I'd already had this other location I was going to have y'all ride to, and until I discovered Happy Camp, I like those roads better. So in a nutshell, I basically moved that location 80 miles south.
Yeah,
it still had nothing to do with a beverage. It was a
Bigfoot.
And the Happy Camp was a Bigfoot too. I was waiting for some writer to say, "What's that to do with beverage?" And I'm like, "Well, you needed one, and Bigfoot's a tall drink of water, or something like that." It was the only one that really didn't make sense, but
I didn't even think about that until you just said it.
I was waiting for, what does that have to do with it? Yeah, well, I don't know. It was something cool that I found, and I needed a beverage there. So anyway, that kind of worked out. It was the same general riding area, and I don't know if you Did you actually claim that?
I claimed 1A. I wasn't going to go to Happy Camp, but I was planning on going on California 199, the Redwood Highway, which was closed.
and that chunk between that 3-4 mile section between Oregon and California was closed. So
so I had to redo things because of that.
So I'm writing this at 10, 11 in the morning, and knowing that you guys are the leg 2 riders, the 33-hour riders, are on their way to check in, and I know the leg 1 riders are right behind me, and it's like I knew you guys weren't going to get that email until you got there. But it's basically how I salvaged it.
It worked out. It was, I knew that my plan was, once I got to Bend, was to sit down and go through roads like, okay, is this still open? Is this still open? Is this still open? And as soon as I saw 199 was closed, I'm like, well, that's it. I got to change things around. But the fact that you moved that beverage down made a little, because that, I don't know if you were if you meant this, but that Happy Camp Road is a total sucker bonus in my, because it's so slow to get. It looks like it's right there, but it's this little tiny 1-lane road.
They're honestly, what kind of routing software were you using?
So I was using a combination of Google and BaseCamp.
Okay, so BaseCamp didn't have, BaseCamp doesn't have a good way to get there, and if you go to Google Maps, it does have a good way to get there, and it really isn't as slow as you think. There's some twisties in there, but if you remember, a couple weeks before or actually when the packs came out, so a couple weeks before the event, I said Rally Master tip, use a couple different pieces, and that was because of that. It was there was another part that somebody else caught in northwestern Washington, where BaseCamp really didn't want to route the right way either. So I think most rallies aren't going to run into weirdness like that, but it was like, BaseCamp just really did not want to route you other than the way along around roads. And so that was the Rally Master tip. I guess we'll get into the 2021. I don't anticipate that kind of weirdness, if you will, for the 2021.
Well, this was the most interesting challenge I've ever had, because for me, I got out to the coast, so my route went south straight in there. So there's a fire on on US 97 that, as I'm riding through it, the ground is still smoking on either side of the road. And so I get down there, and the smoke wasn't bugging me too much until I got down. I ended up going down to Eureka and then came up the Oregon coast that way, and got the combination of fog and smoke at the same time. And there were times where visibility was down to like 100 feet. And,
wow.
And
I heard,
go ahead.
I heard a quarter mile from some riders.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard 100 feet.
Yeah, it was a little scary, because I had just passed this semi on Highway 101, which is a 2-lane road at that point. And I see brake lights up in the distance, like coming up quick, and like, oh crap. And so I'm like relatively new motorcycle with this Goldwing. And so I'm trying to find I don't exactly have muscle memory yet for the hazard. So I'm trying to find those so I don't get rear-ended by this semi I just passed. There is a herd of elk crossing the road.
Wow.
And this big bull elk, I'm on my Goldwing looking up at it, and it was a big boy there, but I was very glad I had other cars in front of me when that
absolutely
happened. But yeah, I was glad to get up to Coos Bay and get off the road at that point, because it was really thick over there.
So that was that on the second day then?
That was first night. Yeah,
that was the first night. Okay. Yeah. You had a pretty good route. I think you were one of only 3 riders that actually went south. So.
Yeah, I when I did my route, I thought it would be better than it ended up being. But I lost some points because I wasn't able to, because I had to cut out my dessert, so I didn't get that combo. And so it was roughly the same amount of points, but it was a fun rally though. I really had a good time on it, and
I'm glad you did.
So I guess the big question is, are you going to do another one?
Yeah, so I really wasn't going to. The plan was, yes, I'm always going to do one, or I was going to do another one. And even at the onset, I was like, just based on interest, because for a lot of riders across the country, that is a long, long ways to go, right? So
Yeah.
really kind of a Pacific Northwest, maybe a little bit of Southern California focus. Um, so I was always kind of thinking every other year, um, and non IBR years. I mean, I am fortunate enough, and I'm very excited to be riding my first IBR this year with nervous apprehension, I guess, which any rookie should have. Um, but and I announced at Bend at the awards banquet that I'm not going to run it. So a couple people really wanted me to, but even some of them that pulled out due to smoke, due to COVID, due to family injuries. I had quite a few riders pull out that, hey, I'll see you next year. And of course, I wasn't going to tell them at the time hey, I'm not running it next year. And I guess 2 days in a cage, getting back to Colorado, it sort of made me think, how can I make this work?
Mm-hmm.
And what I came up with is, look, for me, if you send out a rally pack a week or 2 weeks early, and you don't have some narrative in there, some history about the location, you're really, there's not much there. Obviously, if I'm having you plan on the clock, you could care less about the history, that kind of thing, right? So, what I came up with was, and this will be out on my website that's coming soon. But I came up with, hey, let's do a 3-day ride where you're not quite planning on the clock, but let's run it the same as leg one would be ran of the IBR or Butt Light, where you're planning the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And let's turn it into a not 3 days, 72-hour, but three daylight days. So 60-hour ish. It'll probably be more like 58 to 59 hours, to where you're getting the packet the night before. That way you can't. You're not going to care about all my spelling and grammar errors in it, right? But really ran that way where, not much of a puzzle, maybe a combo or two. Much, in terms, if we just look at the 33-hour / leg two, we're almost not quite doubling the amount of riding time you're getting. So the area is going to be much, much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you right now, I've got locations up into British Columbia, all the way down into Southern Cal and Arizona. I kind of need to bulge it way out this way and towards Colorado. So the riding area, at least, is for the 33-hour / leg two, is going to double plus in size. And there should be routes to the south, to the north, to the east. All over. One thing I am going to do, though, this year is I'm going to make you at least ride to one location that's just west of the center of the I need you to ride at least once on the west of the Cascades, not all the way to the coast, but so I'll have a couple locations that's like, okay, these are one or two of the, there's 3 or 4 locations. You got to ride to one of them, so you got to ride maybe a little bit west before you head east, north, south, whatever.
Well, if you ask anyone from the east side of the Cascades, as soon as you go over the mountains, that's the coast. So even though you could be 400 miles away from it.
Well, it's such a, just from a vegetation perspective, it's just so different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wet, 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 green, green, green. Of course, you know this, living in Washington. As soon as you go east of the Cascades, I mean, it's desert.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a little bit both that experience. I did have the eastern route as a really good route this year, and knew that wasn't going to happen. But next year, you're going to have to at least dip over just a little teeny bit. So.
All right. On this podcast, we ask each guest the same series of 12 questions. We call them the LD Dozen. You game to go?
Yes, I am game to go.
All right. First question: what was your first motorcycle, and why was it your first motorcycle?
Wow. It was, I believe I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, and I can't tell you the exact. It was a it was a Kawasaki Enduro-ish 100. Boy, I'm going to sound like a retard here. It's like a KLX 100, it's 100 something like that. Small bike. I don't know. I had ridden some trail bikes with the local kids in Klamath Falls, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, I want a motorcycle." Well, he happened to be a banker, and he knew the this Kawasaki dealer, so he actually ended up buying one to show me how to ride. And well, that's a whole nother story. He only put 25 miles on the bike, but about a year later, I bought. I can tell you what my second one was for sure. It was a 76 RM Suzuki RM80, and I went out and raced motocross on that.
Oh, nice.
So I'm much more familiar with that one than
Yeah,
I
I
am
bet.
the actual model. I actually have a list, and you just happen to pick the one that I can't tack to with any intelligence.
That's all good. Question number 2. Where did you take your first overnight ride on a motorcycle?
Overnight, like sleeping over, or overnight, like you rode through the whole entire
Oh, either
night?
or. What was the first? I'm guessing it was sleeping somewhere.
Honestly, Randy, my wife, and I have ridden, quite a bit to Canada and to Arkansas, to California, that kind of stuff. So can't really put my name on that. But the first time I'm actually riding at night would have been my first saddle sore, September 11th, 2016.
That's funny. I did my first saddle sore September, I want to say it was like the 14th in 2014.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. It's interesting that that it was that weekend, essentially the second weekend of, and I just actually, the weekend before, which will be a future YouTube video here, but the weekend before the rally, I did an in-state saddle sore because I hadn't done one since then. So, yeah. Things to come on the Long Riders Radio YouTube channel. Question number 3. What is your day job? What pays for your LD riding habit?
So one of the riders calls me a locksmith. It's kind of funny. By trade, I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been in this industry. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree in 1988, just a couple of years ago. And I've been in this industry forever, but on the manufacturing side. I worked for Boeing in Portland, the Portland, Oregon division, big machine shop.
Yeah.
Worked there for 7 years. Went to Warren Industries, hub blocks, that kind of thing. It was also in the Portland area. It's in Milwaukee, Oregon, and just decided I wanted to change and moved out here to Colorado back in late 1998. I've been here ever since. I worked for Schlegel Lock. You probably see the products, but what we make here in Colorado is mostly the commercial side. So think of college institutions, hospitals, that kind of thing. So I'm an engine, and I've graduated to, been promoted, to engineering manager. So it's now I don't do any engineering. I manage a bunch of great engineers who do great engineering for me.
Yeah,
so
cool. All right. What is your favorite non-motorcycling hobby?
Wow. When I get into something, I usually go pretty much full in. Years ago, I was an avid hunter and fisherman, and of course I raced motocross and that kind of stuff. I'm actually somewhat new to the street riding thing. I always thought it was safer being out on a motocross track than it was out on the street. And I don't know, about a dozen years ago, I got the street bug, and ever since I got that, I really haven't had an interest in much outside of that. But I guess hunting and fishing, we're definitely up there at some point.
Cool. All right.
I still have them in the back of my mind, but
yeah. What is your favorite road? And you can define favorite however you want for the purposes of this question.
And like any guy that's actually on a rally, obviously the twisties, they suck a lot of energy. They take a lot of time. I personally hate them at night. My night vision isn't the best, and I've got the best lights in the world, but I hate them at night. But if I'm going to pick a favorite road, it's going to be an off rally pace, daytime twisty section, and there's so many to list. It's like, do you want just pure twisties? Do you want mountain? What kind you want? I mean, a couple of my favorites are the North Rim of the Black Canyon, the Gunnison. I love that, but 141, and then and a lot of the stuff I sent you guys down, the stuff in Northern California, the stuff that you hated, I absolutely just love that. I mean, the stuff around Happy Camp, over in Idaho, between Idaho City and north of there, that section. I'll tell you what, me and Randy are coming back from Canada, and that section, I rode to the top, turned around, rode back down, turned around, rode back up, turned around about like 5 times. I mean, so little bit different than the normal LD crew, but again, not going to be a whole lot of that in next year's ride. There's going to be some, and I'll pay very dearly for it. So I'll pay you points very dearly for it, but you can still be competitive without doing that kind of nonsense. So.
All right, what is, on the flip side of that, what's your least favorite road? I'm going to go with I-25.
Wow, that's an easy one. So, and not to offend any East Coasters or anything, but when I rode the 48 state ride, for the most part, I had it planned out really well. I think I would plan a lot more aggressive going forward if I do it again. But I thought, hey, I'm going to get Washington, D.C., right after I clipped Maryland, and I totally underestimated the amount of road construction, because it was every road that was going around Baltimore, and just the amount of traffic, and it wasn't even close to rush hour. If you're going to put a gun to my head and say what's your least favorite road, it would be anything near Baltimore. Because of that, typically the big cities like Atlanta and New York, whatever, I'm usually pretty good about the timing and planning around them and whatnot. But I absolutely hated that. It was miserable.
All right, so when you're planning out your rally and your riding, what do you use? BaseCamp, Streets Trips, Paper Maps, Google? What's your routing of choice?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of a BaseCamp newbie. I've been using it for a couple of years. Haven't been doing this long enough to use Streets and Trips, that kind of thing. If I have time, and only if I have time, I like mixing it up. I like using a couple different sources, right? BaseCamp certainly doesn't know that, hey, this bridge is out and this road's closed. It doesn't know that. Google Maps does. So if I have time, I'm going to start with BaseCamp, and if I have time, I'm going to bounce that off of Google Maps and say, the hour's about the same, and if I've got, a fairly significant difference, I want to know why.
Yeah.
What did Google Maps know that BaseCamp didn't, or what, and obviously you can do fastest route, shortest distance with BaseCamp, but I like using both if I have time. If I don't have time, I'm gonna go BaseCamp. It's fast.
Yeah.
It's not limited to minimum number of locations and whatever, and comes across clean on a GPX file. So.
All right, if you get a new motorcycle tomorrow, street motorcycle, what is the first Farkle you're going to put on it?
It's really funny that you should ask that, because I might buy a new motorcycle for the IBR, and it will be the same bike I've got. I went through a lot of bikes before I found one that fit me. Really fit me and fit my riding style. I ride a 2016 RT. I love it, and I've had a bunch before that. Lights, hands down lights.
Well, I can tell you, as somebody who, for their rookie IBR, bought a new motorcycle the August. So I rode Butt Light 8 on my 2012 BMW R1200 GS, standard GS. that does not have cruise control on it, and decided, if I'm going to do this big rally, another big rally, I got to have cruise control. I cannot do this with a throttle lock. And so I bought an FJR in August of 2016, and basically spent the winter just getting it ready to go, and it did fine. I mean, it took a little bit longer than I thought it would, because I had a little issue finding a seat that worked properly. And so I had to have 2 seats made, but so I was getting a seat made in March before the rally, but it worked out fine. So
yeah, I'm probably going to stick with the old gal. I just,
but there's the shiny new bike that's calling your name, Gary.
I really don't want the shiny new bike. I just want something that's gonna get me 11, 12, 13,000 miles, whatever it is, right? And that's really, it would just be from a practicality standpoint, to be honest with you.
Just look at it this way: it won't be new after the.
It will
IBR,
not be.
So
we'll see. I'm still on the fence with that one. But yeah, light. I got to see. I can deal with everything else. They come with cruise control.
Yeah.
I can deal with everything else, but I got to see first.
So you had mentioned the next question is, what's your current bike? You mentioned the RT. Why did you go with the RT?
I started out with a lot of different stuff. Believe it or not, I started on a little Harley Sportster, Streetwise, and I moved to a used GS, and I loved the GS on the road. For me and my riding style was a little bit too big and heavy for like off-road. I mean, not fire roads, but single track.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I really want to, I kind of want to get rid of this GS, and I'm just going to go with a 2-bike setup. So I, for whatever reason, I went with the K16 GTL, and a year later, when I could afford it, I bought a KTM 690 for the trails that I could still ride. At freeway speeds on the, looks weird seeing a almost dirt bike looking thing going down the freeway at 85 miles an hour. But, and that worked for a long time, but, the K16, it's a ton of power and all that stuff, the 6-cylinder, but, just a little bit too big for me. And even with, with Randy, my wife, if you look at the RT, so I went up, to answer your question, speed up this a little bit. I went up and test rode one, and I'm like, oh, Randy, we're getting rid of the K16, and it's a less power, or whatever, but it was just more nimble and everything, and Randy used to hate the corners, now she loves them. The wheelbase is, I think, about 5 inches longer on the K16 and the RT, and about 3 inches of that is actually the distance between people. And when we're in the corners, we like to, kind of like be connected. So she likes it better. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's a boxer. It doesn't have a ton of horsepower. It's not the fastest thing out there by any means. Compared to like a Harley or something, it's top heavy at low speeds, but at everything else, it does what I want. It's ergonomically, it fits me, and it honestly just fits me like a glove. So there you go. It's not a BMW endorsement at all. I mean, I love them all. I mean, there is not a bad motorcycle out there. So
who made the seat on that RT?
It's a stock seat, believe it or not. I only use the bead rider, and it's only, I run Aero Stitch gear, and it's just a breathe.
Yeah.
But being an RT, I can stand up on it, which I do on occasion, several times a day, not for any lengthy periods, and especially not when there's bugs out. But I stretch my legs out. There's no custom seat. It's the stock seat.
Nice.
And it's the bead wider, and it works for me.
Cool. All right, question number 11. What is your favorite or most interesting location you visited on a motorcycle?
Wow. Favorite, I guess I would have to say some of the places in Canada, but they are very touristy. You got your Lake Louises, your Banffs, your Jaspers. It depends on what time you hit it. You're never gonna get out of the tourist thing. I kind of like to avoid that, but so there's some of the views up there are just awesome, and we've been up there numerous times and seen just all kinds of wildlife. Kind of a wildlife buff. The most interesting is probably my favorite bonus location. It was only claimed by one rider in Leg 1. Is Uravan, Colorado, and it's really my mind must be messed up, but I saw it on a TV show, and it was they used to before World War II. It was for Uravan, uranium, vanadium, whatever, and it's all radioactive now. It's been filled in, and I saw overhead shots, figured out where it was. Well, you can figure it out pretty quickly where it was, and went there, and it was like, this is just so silly. It's got to be a bonus location. So, yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
It'll probably be in next year, since only one rider claimed this year.
All right, last question. How do you pass the time on a long ride? Do you listen to music, audiobooks? Think of new rallies to run?
Well, the new rallies obviously is something new. I wasn't ever thinking about that when I was doing the long rides before. Music for sure. A day or two of that, and then sometimes it's just like, I just want silence, and I'm a big numbers guy, so I do a lot of kind of just weird math in my head and that kind of thing, and before you know it, I'm at the next location. So, yeah.
Well, Gary, you have completed the LD dozen, and thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been really interesting. Do you have anything else you want to talk about before I let you go?
No, just thank you so much for having me on this. It was a real honor. Like I said, looking very forward apprehensively to the IBR and to hosting the second North by Northwest. And thank you again so much.
Awesome. Well, everyone, that is Gary Huff, Rally Master of the North by Northwest Rally. Thanks again. Well, if you'd like to get in contact with me, there's lots of ways you can do it. Easiest way is to head over to that website, www.longridersradio.com. And another thank you goes out to the folks over at DiscountRamps.com for their support on this episode. DiscountRamps.com offers a huge selection of power sports products for your ATV, UTV, motorcycle, and more. Long Riders Radio listeners can save 15% on their order by using coupon code LONG. That's LONG at DiscountRamps.com. Incidentally, use that coupon code, you help out the show. And as always, we need to thank this show's founder, Mr. Michael Cox. I was talking to Mike the other day, and I said, hey, what's the weather like in Oklahoma City these days? And he said,
every day comes and the forecast gets worse and worse and worse.
Ride safe, everyone.